To mortgage default professionals, both here and around the globe, I'm Jim O'Rourke. Welcome to This Week in Default Servicing. First up in the news, is congressional trouble looming for Fannie and Freddie? Will the newly appointed chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee investigate the GSEs? Then, U.S. home foreclosures could top 100,000 this month. But is this good news for REO housing sales? Plus, will the Massachusetts Supreme Court ruling void thousands of foreclosures? And finally, is mortgage default less likely when the lending is local? New research shows how some banks may have actually reduced the default risk of their home buyers. All this coming up next on This Week in Default Servicing. Broadcasting from the Cradle of Liberty in historic Old City, Philadelphia, This Week in Default Servicing with Jim O'Rourke starts now. According to a report by the Politico this week, Representative Darrell Issa of California, the newly appointed Republican chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, is planning to push for a broad investigation of the foreclosure crisis and wants to scrutinize the roles that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac may have played. The committee purportedly also plans to look into the Obama administration's foreclosure mitigation program and could call on the FHA chief to testify before the committee. It is reported that Representative Issa has agreed to make foreclosures one of the committee's first hearing topics this year. Rick Sharga, Senior Vice President of Realty Track, was interviewed by National Public Radio earlier this week about the expected uptick in foreclosures that usually happens after the holiday lull. According to the report, Sharga expects banks to repossess close to 100,000 homes this month alone, and was quoted as saying that he'd be surprised if we didn't see a record quarter in the first quarter of this year. The NPR report goes on to interview Dr. Lawrence Yun, chief economist for the National Association of Realtors. Yun alluded to the massive shadow inventory of homes not yet on the market, where the owners are more than 90 days behind on their mortgage payments, and was quoted as saying that it's just inevitable that they will go into a foreclosure. Although Yun doesn't expect all of these properties to get dumped onto the market in a single month, he questions whether the already fragile housing market will be able to handle them when they do. In other words, will there be buyers out there for all these additional homes on the market? Many other economists predict the unemployment rate will remain near 9% throughout 2011. If people are unemployed or worried about keeping their jobs, will there be a chilling effect on REO housing sales this year? On Friday, the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts upheld lower court decisions to void the seizure of 2 homes. The unanimous decision of the court held that Wells Fargo and U.S. Bancorp, in 2 separate cases, lacked authority to foreclose on homes they seized back in 2007. Justice Ralph B. Gantz wrote in the decision that the plaintiffs, who were not the original mortgagees, failed to make the required showing that they were the holders of the mortgages at the time of foreclosure. The original land court rulings focused attention on who actually holds the rights to a mortgage when there is an error on the assigning document, specifically when assigning mortgages without naming who they were transferred to, therefore creating so-called blank assignments. Banks and the securitization industry argue that the right to a mortgage follows the sale of the promissory note it secures, and since they hold the notes, they should be deemed to have the right to the mortgage. However, Justice Gantz ends that argument in Massachusetts by writing, where a note has been assigned, but there is no written assignment of the mortgage underlying the note, the assignment of the note does not carry with it the assignment of the mortgage. Some pundits believe that this landmark decision will spawn the filing of many new cases in the state contesting past foreclosures, and others are predicting another shutdown of foreclosures nationwide while documentation issues are again reviewed. While some experts believe the lender will end up retaining significant legal rights once the paperwork is properly amended, there is uncertainty as to the rights of REO property purchasers. The court's decision didn't address what effect this ruling would have on bona fide third-party purchasers who may now not have clear title to their homes. Dr. Stephanie Moulton is an assistant professor in the John Glenn School of Public Affairs at Ohio State University, who recently disclosed some findings from her research study indicating that low-income homeowners who received a mortgage from a local lender were less likely to default on their loans than those who borrowed from a more distant bank or mortgage company. Moulton's research looks at homebuyers who have participated in state-administered mortgage revenue bond programs. She previously studied the program administered by Indiana and is now researching a similar program in Ohio. In both studies, Moulton found that higher-risk homebuyers with loans from banks with branches close to their new homes were significantly less likely to default on their mortgage. But what is it about the local banks that seems to make a difference? In a recent article written by Jeff Gavnarius, Dr. Moulton is quoted regarding local banks. If there's a relationship, the borrower may feel more obligated to make their payments, and the banks may provide more education and information to the borrowers, equipping them to be better homeowners. Moulton also adds, borrowers need to work with lenders that will properly evaluate their application and give them support after they receive the mortgage. What can lenders learn from this? Well, will future mortgage underwriting guidelines place more emphasis on factors other than credit scores, LTV, and income, such as how long the borrower has been working for their current employer, or whether regular deposits are made in the savings account? And will the secondary market require this kind of additional analysis with all loans in the future? Thank you for sharing a part of your day with us. We wish you success in both your professional life and your home life, and hope you'll join us again next week.